Hi everybody. So thanks for coming along and viewing. If you're new to this, do please take it nice and easy. Tai Chi tends to be a little bit stronger than most people assume it's going to be. You can always get in touch and ask questions later if you don't feel like asking questions during the class, which you're very welcome to do, of course. So just to start off with basic posture that we use for many of the exercises, and a posture that really helps us to reflect on basic principles that we want to try and find in various postures, various exercises. Feet are hip width apart, so directly below your hips, you can imagine parallel lines from shoulders to hips to feet. And it could be the inside of your foot, the outside of your foot. So there's a little bit of variation there. Just what's comfortable, but feeling that your body's supported by your legs. Try and bring your weight a little bit forwards. I'm exaggerating now, really just behind the ball of each foot. And then just allow yourself to sit. It really is a feeling of sitting, like when you just sit on a bench or something like that. There's this sense of releasing through the upper part of your body. So that the front of your body is supported by your back. When, in a sense, feel that your whole body is supported from within by your skeleton. So we say that all the outer regions, if you like, of your body are kind of sitting in that deeper area. So the combination of bringing yourself more into line with the pull of gravity rather than leaning forwards or backwards or sideways, of just allowing this sitting feeling, allowing your center of gravity to drop down, what we call rooting down in Tai Chi, and the various other things that we begin to recognize that we're actually well supported in the standing posture. And that's an encouragement to release tightness and stiffness in our back and our shoulders, to try and get away from this idea of sort of having to strain to hold yourself up. So then bring your attention to the middle part of your body, between hips and waist, or pelvis and waist, that kind of area, and just begin to slowly turn there. Notice as you start to move, if as you start to move, if you're losing some of those qualities of the posture, it's quite often the case. It's one thing to get that feeling when you're just standing, not having to move around. As soon as you start to move there, quite often we get pulled around. Try and remember to move from the middle part of your body. So think of this area between hips and waist being like the hub of a wheel. When the hub moves, everything in the wheel moves with it, except for the very middle of the hub. So what we have is a feeling of this middle part of the body sitting onto the ground. Again, that term sitting. And through that, just sort of having a base to rest on, to allow that movement around the rest of your body. This is a very light movement, just swinging gently, letting your arms fall wherever they fall, not trying to get them into any particular place, and not trying to maneuver them. Don't hold your arms out or anything like that, just let your arms hang down. And it's a good warm-up exercise. It's got a very gentle aerobic quality and just helps to raise your heartbeat a little bit, warm your body up, warm your muscles up a little bit. At the same time, it helps us to understand this feeling particularly in our upper body, of our arms following what's happening in the center of our body. And this is quite a difficult thing to maintain in Tai Chi and Qigong. We're very used to doing things with our arms and our hands. We're evolutionarily hardwired to do that. So it feels quite odd to do this But this feeling of your arms being pulled around is one that is it's an important element in everything that we do. One image that we often use in Tai Chi is that we're moving through water. And this resistance that the water offers, the resistance that we have to sort of soften to release into rather than to stiffen up against, it's a very apt feeling. If you were standing in water up to shoulder height doing this, it would be quite difficult to move your arms. You have to sort of pull them around, let your shoulders soften, let your elbows soften, let your fingers soften. Otherwise, you'll meet more and more resistance. And the resistance of the water also offers a quality of movement that is more connected. When we move against resistance in one way or another, we naturally use more of our body. So we want to take this feeling, we want to keep this quality of movement in our arms and in the rest of our body, but we want to bring into it a certain amount of definition. We want to create certain shapes and patterns coming out of the movement in the rest of our body, but expressed in our arms. So, although this is an important feeling, it's not the last word, shall we say. So now just turn your hand palm out, raise them up a little bit to just below or at shoulder height. And you can see my elbows are hanging down, and maintaining the shape, trying to use the whole of your arm, not just big muscles like your biceps and triceps. In fact, you want to try and let them just release, to relax a little bit. And still with that feeling of your arms being pulled around, but with a more clear, definite shape to them. And then just drop down. So these are useful exercises to start with, and as always, for more experienced people, you know, this is a good way to begin your day, to begin your practice, to give you a chance just to reflect on these principles that we come to know in Tai Chi. So from the side, so you can see what I'm doing, just begin to rock your weight forwards and backwards. Come a little bit closer so that you can see more what I'm doing. I'm pivoting from my hips, from my ankles, I beg your pardon. These are the hips, those are the ankles. What I don't want to do is this, or this, because as soon as I start to get beyond a certain point, my body responds by trying to stiffen up. And I mentioned earlier 2 parallel lines. You can imagine a third one going down through the middle of your body, the center line of your body. If I use this pole as a representation of that, 2 things about this. When I do the rocking exercise, it does this. So one aspect of the center line is that I'm trying to maintain an awareness of it, of how my body works. Yeah. What I want to avoid is this, leaning forwards, leaning backwards. So again, the movement is from my ankles, my weight moving in my feet. The second aspect of the center line is, I mean, here I've got it moving with me, but if I were to, in a sense, leave it behind, I don't want to go too far from it again, because then I would start to stumble. And eventually, what I want to try and do is to find a standing posture that puts me in line with the pull of gravity. And in theory, I could take this pole, if it had a completely flat bottom, and I could leave it there and it would not do that. In practice, of course, that's going to be much harder. But once once we get a sense of being in line with the pull of gravity rather than straining against it, all sorts of changes begin to take place in our posture, because there's less need for straining. And again, we recognize that we may well find that we start to lose that alignment as we start to go through various exercises. But it's something to have in the back of your mind. So aligned with this overwhelming force that is moving through the pull of gravity, supported by your legs, the center of gravity dropping, rooting down, and supported through the middle of your body, the skeleton and the surrounding tissue, so that it's as though you've got this, well, you have got this kind of inner framework that the soft tissue of your body is sort of wrapped around like a garment in a shop window on a mannequin. It's given shape by what comes from within, not by the tightness, the stiffness of your back and your shoulders. So these are things, again, that we want to try and maintain as much as possible as we go through the various movements. So, letting your hips drop back a little bit more, and then pushing up. So trying as much as possible to stop your knees from protruding forwards. You stay above the balls of your feet or thereabouts. And be careful, don't go down too far. Don't start thinking that you've got to bend your knees. Again, it's an extension of this process of sitting. We sit into the ground, we sit into our legs, and then just gently push up. So gravity pulls you down, just trying to soften in your lower back and your hips in particular to allow gravity to work through you, pull you down. And then the natural resilience, the springiness in our legs helps to push us up again. And every now and then, perhaps just getting a sense of a little bit extra releasing as the tension and tightness dissolves away. You start to get that feeling. Every now and then, your center of gravity, your roots, just dropping a little bit more. Now, from this position, bring your hands around so you're cradling the ball. As you push up, your elbows get pushed out. And then turn your hands over as though you've got your arms draped over the ball. Drop your hips, let your shoulders go down as though you're pushing the ball down. Pushing up. So those of you familiar with this exercise, as you do it, you should be able to just take note of subtle changes and patterns of movement within your body. If you're new to this, just follow the movement as best you can. Try to keep a sense of focus of attention within your body, on your posture, your movement, any changes, any sensations that you notice, and help to just maintain that focus of attention. And with an overall intent to release tightness, to release stiffness, particularly as you sink down. Body expanding and no particular breathing pattern, no particular method of breathing at this point. Unless you've already sort of been over that with me. Just letting your body breathe naturally and comfortably. Don't force your breathing. A little bit, otherwise my fingers will disappear. Turn your hands out, push up and Wargus. So with this one, we have the image of a bird in flight. As always, we use a great deal of imagery in Tai Chi. And it's one of the ways that we make this link, this connection between what we think of as body and what we think of as mind. We realize that our bodies are very responsive to imagery, usually, for most of us. And so, if the image conveys a quality, or an idea, or a principle for you, then you can make use of it. If it doesn't, then don't chase after the image. It may come to mean something at some point, but not every image is going to work. But with this one, maybe the image of the bird in flight, it's quite a graceful image, but also quite a strong one. You think of waving a feather up and down in the air. Wave the feather, just bend slightly to the resistance of the air. Now, letting your hands drop down, crossing it in front of your belly. This time as you push up again, your elbows are pushed out, drawing your hands and your fingers around as they drop down, drawing them down. So this circular movement called parting the clouds, with this lovely feeling of an opening, an expansion that the kind of thing we would get if the clouds were thick and the sun suddenly came out from behind them. Parting the clouds, just a gentle opening through your body. Not stretching. Nothing against stretching, but we won't be stretching in these sessions. The focus is on the movement. And again, as we get more experience on that sense of the movement within the body, moving our arms forwards rather than the other way around. This time, let your hands drop down, feel the weight of your arms hanging from your shoulders. And as you push up again, your elbow leading, drawing one hand up. At the top of the movement, wrap your fingers around gently, rotate your arm like you're plucking something off a tree and pull down. Change to the other side, take your time, push up. Gently wrapping your fingers around, rotate and so when you wrap your fingers around, imagine wrapping them around something quite delicate like a flower or a feather or a soft fruit or something. Don't grip tightly. This is called Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky. And again, if you look at where my arm stops, my elbow's still a little bit curved. I could have gone a little bit further. But just be aware of the sense of space within your body that comes out of your posture. That alignment with the pull of gravity and the rooting down. As the tightness dissolves away, you have more space for movement. And one of those key aims in these arts is to really cultivate that internal movement, the flow of the energy. The dragon plucks the stars from the sky. One more round. And again, for people who are more familiar with these movements, just ask yourself, have you drifted off? It's like, oh, I know this one. And remember, one of the things that we're trying to do is just to maintain a gentle focus of attention in our bodies. So there's a quieter quality in our minds, not quite so full of our normal thoughts. Now bring your hands to your sides, keep that feeling of your hips just dropping back. The hips and buttocks are overhanging slightly. And pelvis hanging from the base of your spine. And this time, both hands together, pushing up, just keeping your hands in front of your body a little bit, just feeling that lengthening through your back. and then coming back and resting for just a moment by the side of your hip before they lift again, and this time pushing out and back. And again, push out. And I turn around because I want you to think about your back. Again, we're very orientated towards being aware of the front of our body, but just see if you can feel that expansion and contraction through your back. Almost like somebody's gently massaging your back lengthways and then widthways. And that's, of course, something which will be helped by the posture. If you're not straining in your back to hold yourself up, just allowing the front of your body to hang from the back, not tight, not stiff, then you're far more likely to begin to appreciate these internal movements. So this time, when you go to push your hands out sideways, turn in the center of your body, changing the direction that your arms are moving in through the center and then back. So everything in this particular exercise will bring your attention into the center of your body. Because the hands come back to that point. And again, we have this rhythm, we expand out. So we're reaching out from the center, but then always returning. And at this point, just able to sort of consider our posture and so on, just for a moment before we begin the next movement. So 4 directions. You start by pushing up and always coming back. Just a split second, like a comma in the sentence, before you move into the next exercise, next part of the exercise. And then back. And then in the other direction, and back. And one way you think of this exercise is that it's like you've got a ball or a balloon here in that center part of your body. Somebody's pumping air to it, so you expand. In fact, your whole body will expand in all directions rather than just your arms going up. Same thing here, there's a rotation, but the expansion upwards, sideways, downwards, and back. Just generating the feeling that our whole body is moving as one unit. Body and mind moving as one unit, rather than separate components. Again, if we can use the image of moving through water, then as our body begins to suspect that there's a degree of resistance there, that too can help that sense of what one of the old writings describes as when one part of your body is in motion, your whole body is in motion, your whole body is engaged. And that's both in mechanical terms, but also in terms of the flow, the energy of the movement. The last time for pushing in 4 directions. So all of these things are useful reflections when we're familiar with the movements. We can get a sense of how much we're able to maintain these basic principles and qualities within the body. Inevitably, we lose them. But like the exercises themselves, we can come back to that sense of being centered. Now, let your hands drop down. And with the next expansion, one arm being pushed out and up. So it's in line with your nose and straight down the center line of your body. Back to its original position. Just tracing out a half circle. Strain to pull your wrist back. As much as is comfortable. Recognize it's going to be quite a strong movement on the shoulder, and your side and hip. So if it's comfortable, you can then just turn again in the center of your body. And try it on the other side. Notice any difference between one side of your body and another. And then, again, if it's comfortable, just add in the turn. Weight forwards a little bit, hips dropping back. So you're moving through water. And then just come back to the standing position. So before we move on, just consider these three aspects of ourselves that we try and bring together and harmonize what we think of as mind, and that can include our facility for imagination, our feelings, as well as thought, our body, the mechanics of the movement, the physical connections, of course, are very important, and the movement itself, the flow, the energy, and all of these things should begin to interact and harmonize, so that when, for instance, if I had if there was a box on the floor there and I was expecting it to be empty, I said, oh, I'm just going to get rid of the box. I'll pick the box up and I'll throw it away. But suppose somebody had put a whole load of books in, I'd go to pick it up and I'd stop, and then I would use both hands, but I would change how I move. It was just a natural instinctive thing, and so the whole feel of the movement becomes different, the mechanics become different, the flow becomes different, and so on and so forth. So this interaction between body, mind, and energy can actually produce some very different responses in our body over a period of time. The next two movements are unusual in the sense that we go out of line. I said earlier about being in line with the pull of gravity, and when I do a movement like this, the one we were doing earlier, hopefully I'm staying in line with the pull of gravity as I do this. My hips and my pelvis are level to the floor, and that helps to keep me upright. But if, as I sink down, I push my hips back, the pelvis tilts, you can see I come away from the line. This is a very different way of doing things than leaning forward. If I lean forwards, I'm once again going to topple forwards. But if I push my hips back, my head and shoulders quite naturally go forwards. I'm exaggerating here. You don't have to go down this low. And then I let my hips and buttocks drop down, let gravity pull them down, and that helps to bring my head up. It's like if that was the center line of the body, it's like there's a lever, you push down on one end, the other end comes up. So these next two exercises are quite tricky, but they also show us how the center part of the body sort of directs the movement of the body, directs the actions of the body, not just when it turns horizontally, as we were finding out earlier, but also vertically. So go nice and easy. Be careful of your back and your knees. I'll do the movements quite big so you can see what I'm doing. It's not meant to be a challenge. Just move as far as you're comfortable. Start with sinking down and pushing up, your pelvis staying level. But then this time, as you sink down, push your hips back, extending your back gently, and then let your hips drop down and push up. Again, I'm going to do this with my back to you so you can see. If I put my hand here, perhaps see what happens there. My hand goes back, and then it's going to come down like this, and then I push up. So 3 stages: 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. And this time, bringing our arms into the movement. On 1, they come up and out a little bit. Well, that's on 3, isn't it? Then going forwards. It's called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. So look for this action in the center of your body rather than thinking it's going to be a big dramatic movement. Very gentle extension from your pelvis to the crown of your head. Don't strain. Not necessarily the case that the bigger the movement, the better. And rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Using gravity, allowing gravity to pull your hips down, bring you upright. And giving us this strange feeling of so our head was floating up. One more time. The next one uses the same mechanism but adds to it horizontal rotation. Let your hands come in front of your belly. Turn. Then push your hips back so your hands are pushed forwards. Turn again and come back. It's called polishing the table. You turn, push your hips back, drawing your hands around in a smooth circle, almost like you're rolling the big ball around. Very gently and carefully. This is fine, by the way. And it's not always the case that big movements are the most valued in these arts. I will carry on doing it quite big so you can see the mechanics of the movement. But quite often, when we move less on the outside of the body, we notice more about what is going on inside the body. Do one more to each side of polishing the table. And once again, stand. So mostly in Tai Chi, we would look to maintain this upright posture in line with the pull of gravity. You can give your legs a little bit of a shake. Of course, that's not always practical. Tai Chi began as a martial art, and you want more than one position. And life has many different sort of challenges and so on and so forth. But what we try and do is to not stray out too far. I showed the center line of the body at one point earlier in this class. Think of that as being like the mooring post for a boat on the sea. And what will happen is the boat will drift away, but it would always get pulled back. So if in your mind you can have this idea of a center line of the body as something to return to, that would stop you overextending. And it's very easy to sort of overreach or whatever in life. You bend down to pick something up or whatever. One of the advantages in Tai Chi, one of the great benefits, I think, is a growing awareness of how to use our body differently with less strain, less stiffness, less chance to damage ourselves, and ultimately less chance of kind of falling over and so on and so forth. A lot of it is down to this awareness of how gravity is working through our bodies. And it's a good example of where awareness and mechanics and the quality of the movement, the flow of the energy, very much come together into one whole thing. So, I've talked about these things as though they're separate, but they interact all the time, and we're cultivating that interaction. Then do another exercise that allows a little bit of kind of leeway. Normally, we would think in terms of our shoulders staying in line with our hips, but with this one, there's a little bit of a sway in our hips and our shoulders. One of the reasons I like it, actually. So start by just moving your weight a little bit from side to side. And then instead of, normally we will try and keep our hips fairly level, but this time you sink down a little bit in the supporting leg and you push up. So there's a movement upwards and then you drop down again. There's gentle curve over and down. At the same time as you go into your left foot, so mirror my movements, you turn your hip and here you turn. So you can see I'm going slightly offline. The exercise is called bear play. It's actually a part of a set of movements called bear play. And you think about the bear as it strolls along, quite a kind of fluid movement, a supple movement, quite a powerful movement. Your shoulders will mirror the movement in your hips. So as your hip comes up and go down, as your hip swings, the shoulder swings. And again, this is quite unusual in Tai Chi to have this amount of movement in the shoulders. Just feel the effect of the movement in your back, down the sides of your body. And then this time, let your elbow come up as well. And this is the front paw of the bear, pressing down. And then on the other side. Feel the movement in your back and your spine, that sense of your spine being a little bit sort of supple and bendy, not too much. Just have a sense for the energy that develops. Nice and smooth. I'm going to go back a bit. My elbows are disappearing. Again, we could use that image of moving through water. I rather like the image of the bear as something that is quite supple, quite fluid, but also at the same time quite strong. It seems to just illustrate elements of Tai Chi that I think are very important. And in the other exercises, particularly for those of you who are familiar with the exercises, taking note of the sort of feel of the movement, the energy in your hips, back and shoulders is a useful thing, because even when we're in the postures that require a little bit more precision, where we're keeping shoulders in line, we're not letting our hips swing out, we're still looking for that quality of movement, which is quite a tricky thing. And it's one of those things, if you can take note of it here, then you can recall it a little bit, and that feeds into your intent. So we bring various qualities into this intentional movement. Imagery, memory, an awareness of posture, an instruction, do this with your hips, do this with your shoulders. And there are various sort of proportions of those in all the movements. The bear play. Good. And just shake it. We're going to change the stance, but we maintain the principles. We keep our feet hip width apart. You can turn one foot out, and you feel free to play around with that angle. Step forwards, about the same in length as it is in width. So roughly speaking, as though you're on the diagonal corners of a square. Don't have it too short a step because we're going to be moving the weight, but don't have it too long because then we'll have to start straining. Let your hips drop a little bit, soften your knees, and begin to just move your weight from front to back and back to front. So in the last exercise, we were actively going up and down, up and down. As much as possible, we want to not do that in this exercise. There may be a little bit of movement, but it's not something that we would intend. But we still get that sense of sinking into our feet and the push back. It's just that the intention is for that energy to move us forwards or move us backwards. So we get to a thing here when we're in the back leg, that's 70% of our weight there. When we go forwards, maybe up to 60%, a little bit less at the moment. And just learning to maintain posture as we move and to really focus where we want our weight to go. If I move forwards and I'm sort of moving in that direction, then I'm going to stumble if I'm not careful. And the other thing is not to lead with the shoulders. For the moment, particularly newer people, just imagine that you're sitting on the hips. It's almost like riding a bike. You ride a bike, you know full well that if you lean out too far, you're going to fall off the bike. So let your legs do the work of moving you. And then when you sink back this time, just draw your front toes up. Feel this hip sinking down. More of your weight goes into your back foot. Let the front foot turn out at this point. Go forward, push your back knee forward. Feel the hip drop and your heel come up. More of your weight going into the front. So we gradually increase the percentage of weight flowing down through our supporting leg, trying to bring our body into line with that leg, a head over the foot, not leaning or tilting, leaning forward or backwards, until almost all of the weight of our body flows down through the supporting leg. And at that point, just bring the other foot in, push out. So if it's going back, the ball of the foot goes down first, then your heel, then your weight. If you're stepping forwards, it's your heel goes down first, then the toes. Just drawing your foot in gently and pushing out. Trying to do that without losing the alignment of your hips and pelvis. Allowing your center of gravity to drop. The alignment of your body, and the deeper the root, the more stable you will be. Then have your other foot forwards. Same thing, same stance, and forwards. Remember, as you do this, I said earlier about the hips and buttocks overhanging a little bit. This is strong in the muscles of our legs, but it shouldn't be strong in the knee. Remember, your knee is like a hinge on the door. You don't want it to be weight bearing. So this is an important exercise to condition our legs in the way that we want them to be conditioned for Tai Chi. As I said earlier, Tai Chi is often discovered to be stronger than we think it's going to be. And then again, raising toes and heel. So this is an important exercise. Transfer of the weight, as you'll see in a few moments, is one of the key movements, one of the key energies that we make use of in Tai Chi. Remember the saying, our movement is rooted in our feet, transmitted through our legs, directed through the center part of our body, expressed in the arms, not the other way around. So stepping in, you can either leave your foot up in the air, or if you get here and you're a bit wobbly, just put the toes down. Give yourself a moment just to be aware of your posture. And then this time, depending on which way you've got space, either forwards or backwards, take a step forwards, bring the other foot in, heel, toes, weight, or ball of the foot, heel, weight. So you're walking on thin ice. Planting the foot. I'm going to change direction. So we use these movements to generate the energy to move the arms. And the arms, it's not that the arms don't do anything, but they come last in the chain of events. So the first movement we're going to do is called Fisherman Caster Net. I start my hands at my side. My weight goes forwards. You see how my arms are staying behind, and then they swing through, and then back and swing through. Again, as though you're moving through water. So have your right foot forwards, mirror my movements. Push forwards, feel your weight dropping into your front leg, and then your arms swinging through a little bit, and then back. Because your arms are just swinging freely and they're attached to your shoulder, there's a natural curve. Don't try and lift your arms. Just let the energy, the flow of the movement, the momentum of the movement generate the movement in your arms. Like a wave that starts in your back foot, flows up through your back and into the front of your body, down into the front, and then back. Fisherman Caster Net. So you're moving through water. Now, come into your front foot. If as you go back, you turn a little bit to your left, that brings your hands around, they swing up, let them come up a little bit higher, no higher than shoulder height, go forwards, let them come down, almost brushing against your hip, and then up and then down, like a sideways figure of eight. So your weight moves, center of your body turns, you have this rhythm of expansion and contraction to the back, belly and chest. All of which combine to give us this flow of movement through our arms. So you're moving through water still. One more time. Good, and shake out. Now, same thing on the other side. So left foot forwards and fisherman casting there. Again, try not to over move your arms. It's a very fluid, soft movement in your arms, but with that image, you can move them through water. So there was a curious combination of movements in Tai Chi. Fisherman casting there. The flow comes from the way that we're using the whole of our body, not just our arms, not just our shoulders. Your arms are being moved by your legs, transfer your weight, principally. Fisherman cast the net. One more time, going forwards, and then as you come back, you turn to your right. The arms swing up. Remember, the circle is the natural unit of movement for your arms because they're attached at one end and not at the other. Try not to let your arms get too far from your shoulders. You can see how my elbows are still quite bent. Likewise here. If they go out too far, everything starts to come offline. Body expanding and contracting. Expanding and and this time I'm going to go forwards, but depends where you've got the space. So I'll turn my front foot out. As my hands swing up, my foot comes in, and then I step heel, toes, and weight. Everything on the other side, bringing my foot in and step, and maybe, yes, maybe, with a little bit more of a lift in your legs if you feel stable enough to do this. If not, keep your foot down on the floor. Don't lose the sense of alignment and the flow in your body. I'm going to go back now because otherwise I'm going to bump into the camera. Easy and gently. And then bring the feet down. Shake out. Rub your hands together. And then with the pads of your fingers, just tap lightly over your face. And then over your head and neck. I'm using the palms of my hands now. Down to one shoulder, your arm. This can help to take some of the tightness out of your nostrils and on the side. It's also a good way of, again, sort of warming up if we could have done it at the start. And then upper part of your back. This is not, we'll get lower part of it, not upper part. As much of your back as you can get to, around your hips and buttocks. And then going down the outside of your legs, not the inside. Light on your belly. And onto the upper part of your chest. So all of these things that I talk about, that we have in Tai Chi, should be seen as aspirations. We get them, we lose them. We get them, we lose them. It's the return that is so crucial, I think, that we can come back to this sense of being centered, being still and being calm. This is illustrated by our closing exercise. You sink down, it's called embrace tiger, return to the mountain. You push up, maybe just overextending slightly or just losing that sense of center. But you wrap your arms around as though you're holding the ball, drawing in and just letting yourself come back to this posture, back to the mountain. Embrace tiger, return to mountain. Just try and have a sense of what it is that draws you back. Could be the pull of gravity on your hips, the image of the mountain, some other quality that you've noticed. One more round. And just a couple of slow, gentle breaths. Lovely. So as always, if you have any questions at any time, do feel free to email me. If not, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much for coming and joining in, everybody.